Hello, everyone. We're sorry we were a few minutes late. We had some technical issues. Thank you for your patience. I'm just gonna wait for just a few seconds to make sure everyone is joining. All right, people are joining. Welcome. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our today's event about Michigan's clean energy and clean and equitable energy future. I'm sorry about my voice. I've been sick for two weeks now. I'm Ranza Potter, the Development Director at the Ecology Center, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. This program is scheduled to last until 6:30. We're going to be hearing a presentation from our three speakers, and then we'll have time for questions after. If at any time during the event you have a question, please use the Q&A box to share with us. If you look at the bottom of your screen, the Zoom screen, you will see the Q&A box, so you can leave questions there. And after the presentations, we'll have time for questions. So don't worry, we'll have plenty of time to answer questions. And please note that today's event is being recorded and materials from today's presentation will be available tomorrow. So if you need them, you can send me an email, send us an email, and we will share it with you. I want to introduce our speakers for today's event. We have Senator Sue Shink. She's a community advocate, public servant, and mother who has dedicated her adult life to building healthier, more resilient communities. She's serving her first term in the Michigan Senate, where she's fighting for working families. Senator Shink believes that the government's role is to serve the people with skill, honesty, and integrity. Hailing from a proud union family, she grew up in southeastern Michigan and earned her bachelor's, master's, and law degrees from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Prior to being elected to the Senate, Senator Shink served as chair of the Washoe County Board of Commissioners and as Northfield Town Trustee. She was also chair of the Agricultural Land Preservation Advisory Committee and served as a member on the Huron River Watershed Council, as well as the Washoe County Food Policy Council. And we have Alexis Blisman. She has years of experience working on political and legislative campaigns in Michigan, New Mexico, and nationally in her role as Legislative and Policy Director at the Ecology Center. Alexis has practiced law in Alexandria, Virginia, and has experience in nonprofit leadership, having served as Executive Director of Equality New Mexico from 2005 until 2008. And she's been a staff member at the Ecology Center since 2011. And also we have Charles Griffith. He has more than 30 years of experience in research and advocacy on clean energy solutions and has specialized in the automotive and transportation sector and advocating for cleaner vehicles, fuels, and transportation choices. Now I'm going to hand it over to our presenters. We're gonna start with Charles Griffith. And again, please remember to post questions in the Q&A box.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. I think we are actually going to let the senator go first if she's ready. Is that correct, Senator Shink?
So I have to say, I'm the one who's having technical problems. I had a 1-inch version of my talk showing. I tried to do something to make the entire thing show and it disappeared. So actually, Charles, if you could go first, I would appreciate it. And then maybe I can do the talk without talking points, but it will be somewhat abbreviated. And I think if you go first, mine might be better. So I apologize for that. Sometimes technology is not our friend. And tonight I'm having a little trouble.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you.
Well, let me start with just a little bit of background about how we got here, and that is the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan that the governor convened a whole climate council to deliberate on with numerous working groups that worked on different sectors of the economy. And, you know, one of those big areas was cleaning the electric grid, and that's the sort of main topic of discussion for our session here tonight, and we'll get to that. But there are other key sectors like transportation and buildings, industrial emissions, land and agricultural emissions. And then there was kind of this overarching theme of committing to sort of equity and justice in the transition to clean energy. So I wanted to kind of start with, how this clean energy package really came together. And it was sort of the first set of priorities. And of course, a lot of the gains in other sectors depend on having a clean electric grid. And to that, theme, clean transportation is largely going to be solved or achieved by having clean electricity to power increasing number of electric vehicles to, again, run our transportation system. So one of the working groups that the Climate Council, put together was on transportation and mobility. And I was honored to be asked to serve as a co-chair of that working group for the Governor's Climate Council. And, we started by, we met over, numerous months to try to figure out what should be the top priorities for the state to achieve, significant emission reductions in this sector. And if we could advance this 2 slides further than this one, I can go over a little bit of that. So I would say, even though there's more listed here, there were kind of 3 sets of recommendations or of strategies that were identified. And this is just a summary of those. But the first is really, as I just kind of alluded to, is the electrification of our transportation vehicles. And the policies range from, enacting purchase incentives to sort of help people shift and bring down some of the upfront costs of going electric, both for, not only passenger vehicles, but fleets, and which include heavy and medium duty trucks and buses and things like that. And another set of those policies for electrification are to help build out the electric vehicle charging infrastructure that we need to ensure, people can get where they need to go when they're away from home, even though, or their home, charging depot if you're a, commercial operation. So there's a need to continue to build out that infrastructure, and we need policies and other programs to do that. Another strategy that was adopting a clean fuel standard for the state, and this is kind of one of those bold transformational policies that would really start to move us away from fossil-based fuels for powering our transportation vehicles by requiring a lower and lower carbon content of the fuels that are sold across the state. I'll come back to that one in a minute. And then the third set of policies were dealing with strategies to expand clean mobility options like transit and walking and biking and micromobility, things that get people out of their cars and provide cleaner options for getting to work or to school or what have you. So there was a range of recommendations in that category. Now, we could go 1 slide further. We did achieve some success in this area of the climate plan through the budget last year. And that is, of course, a very powerful policy tool that we have, is to actually create programs to fund the things that we like. Of course, at the federal level, we have the Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, which are also pouring millions and billions of dollars into clean energy. And some of that, a good amount of that is coming into the state through various formula funds, but some of them are also competitive. So to be competitive, we have to also be willing to spend state dollars, so that we can leverage those federal funds. But some of the things that we were successful in getting in through the state budget process this past year included some significant dollars to help school districts in transitioning to clean and electric school buses. $125 million in the school aid fund toward transitioning that fleet. And that should be rolling out, that program should be rolling out later this spring. We also were successful in getting some significant increases in clean transportation options like transit and rail, and increases in the bus operating funds for transit agencies. So that was an important win. In addition, we got some more modest amounts of funding toward build out of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, primarily along Lake Michigan, but also potentially other parts of the state. And we got some seed money to start transitioning the state's fleet to electric power, electric vehicles, I should say. But we still need to work on some of those more transformational policies that I discussed earlier. And if we can go back one slide, I'd like to just finish up by saying, again, at the top of our list here would probably be this clean fuel standard, which would, along with requiring transportation agencies to start planning for greenhouse gas reductions in how they operate their program. So a clean fuel standard, would not only require reductions in the carbon content of fuels, but it would generate the revenue we need to invest in some of the cleaner fuels that we want to see. Right now, we could, try to cobble together money in the state budget for incentives and other kinds of investments in charging infrastructure, but we know those dollars are limited. And pardon me for not mentioning it earlier, as we seek additional budget items in this year's budget, which I'm sure the senator can tell us will be starting up very shortly as the governor starts that process as early as next week. We know that a lot of the budget surplus dollars that we had to work with last year have been largely depleted, and so we're going to be working with a much tighter budget than we had the luxury of last year. So we need to think about more sources of revenue or ways to generate revenues to invest in the stuff that we want. So that's one of the things that a clean fuel standard can do. On the transportation sort of planning, and we'll come up with a better title for this, I promise you. But there have been some model policies passed in states like Minnesota and Colorado, where they now require that all the transportation agencies to meet reduced emissions from transportation writ large, and they have to meet those reductions in order to spend their transportation budget. So if the emissions are oriented toward projects that expand roads, for example, that increase emissions, they're going to have to counter any of those emissions by investing in more transit or other options that help people get out of their cars and reduce overall emissions. So we think a policy like that would also make sense here in Michigan, and we are going to begin to work on a strategy to get to adopt something similar here in Michigan. Now, I'll just say one other area that in the transportation realm that is worth mentioning is that we are in the middle of the adoption of new EPA standards for both light-duty passenger vehicles as well as heavy-duty vehicles, and those rules are pending, inside the Biden administration currently. That the proposed rules were issued last year. There's been extensive public comment periods. I know that we probably sent you some alerts about this to urge EPA to adopt strong standards, but we're now in this final phases where the lobbying is getting even more intense on both sides, and so we're going to continue to push the administration to keep those standards as strong as possible, and those will make a big difference in terms of the efficiency of the vehicles that we're putting on the road, including the incentivizing going increasingly electric. So keep a watch out. We and other groups that will probably be sending out more alerts on this in the coming months. We expect those standards to be finalized as early as next month. So with that, hopefully we are ready to go back to our presentation about the clean energy package that was passed this past year, and also some of the follow-up work that we need to be doing this year to implement that. But take it away, Senator Shink.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me to talk with people tonight. I appreciate the Ecology Center so much. The Ecology Center has always been a part of my environmental life going back into the 90s. And Charles, I've always looked to you for great leadership, and it hasn't stopped. It's just really helpful. And it's one thing for me to say how much I admire you. It's another thing to say how important the work of the Ecology Center is, as well as the other partners who fought for the clean energy package, because as much as this is bold action, it's a win for all Michiganders. The Democrats are really proud of what we've done because we did it without the help of our Republican colleagues, although they have the option. Several said they would support certain parts of it, but they're committed to coal. So what could they do? This is a bill package that is positioning Michigan to be a leader in sustainable energy production. It will reduce carbon emissions. It should reduce costs adjusted for inflation. And of course, we can't control everything. It should increase our reliability and affordability. And it's the first time that equity has actually been considered in energy policy. And with all that, I can tell you that it was a hard-won victory. There was really tough negotiation. There were changes sometimes every day, especially on the bill that I was working on, the MPSC purview bill, which injected equity into energy policy for the first time. Without our outside partners, it would not have happened the way it did. And I know that because I made a lot of phone calls, and people spoke up when it was necessary to speak up and let our colleagues know that this was really important to them. And so I would say that this was a grassroots victory, and I'm really excited about the changes that we've made. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the specifics. There are different ways to go after what do we achieve. And so I just want to say a few things to help you get a sense of how important this is. So this is going to move us away from coal. We have a 0% coal production goal by 2030. That's a big deal. the cost of energy from coal is actually about $133 per megawatt, while the levelized cost for energy from renewable sources is about $64. But there's a lot of inertia, and so these bills are going to remove that inertia and help us to lower cost energy. It's also going to increase our energy waste reduction efforts as well as our weatherization efforts. Those are two different things. Energy waste reduction happens at the utility level and energy efficiency happens at the building level. But we know that regardless of where the efficiencies happen, the energy that we don't use is the cheapest energy, right? It's the cheapest gains we have in reductions of carbon emissions. And so we'll be looking at saving about $4, for every dollar that we save on energy efficiency, it results in a $4 savings for customers. And that's where some of the savings is going to come from. So according to modeling by Five Lakes Energy, these bills should reduce the average annual household cost for Michigan families by approximately $145 by 2035. These savings come from cutting the amount spending on transportation, fuels, natural gas, keeping electricity rates stable. And so that's a good thing. If people are really engaged and they take advantage of some of the rebates and other things, they could save over $1,000. So the other thing that these bills are going to do is bring money into the state. It doubles the amount that we should be able to bring back in federal investment from about $7.8 billion to about $15 billion. And we should see about $5 billion of that within the next decade. In fact, we were told that modeling showed that if we waited just from last fall to the spring to pass the legislation, that we would be costing our state about $1 billion. So workers are not going to be left out of this. They must be paid prevailing wages, and entities performing the construction and maintenance have to enter into labor agreements or collective bargaining agreements. And the organizations working on the utility scale developments have to be participating in apprenticeship programs registered with the U.S. Department of Labor. So these represent the highest standards protecting labor of any climate package passed in the country. And I'm really proud because I know that I worked really hard to make this happen. And that again was one of those victories that was hard fought and feels good to have won. So we have 100% clean energy standard by 2040, which is better than every state except for Rhode Island. And right now, 2/3 of our power comes from fossil fuels. So this is going to be a lot of changes coming pretty quickly. But we can build this out. We have the ability to do that. And we're very excited because we're doing it in a way that should be equitable and will respect the neighborhoods that have often been most subject to environmental degradation. And that's where the equity comes in. We are going to make Michigan a top 3 state in energy storage, and this will help us stabilize our grid. So I'm excited about that because I think most of us have been experiencing power outages, which mostly come from local problems, but our grid needs some stabilization as well. So one of the things that is different also about these bills from the past is that it really increases the amount of money that is going to people that we would say is environmental justice impacted. And so that will make our weatherization efforts and energy efficiency efforts so much more effective. And then the other thing, and this is one of the bills that I really worked hard on, is that the MPSC has to confirm that the energy provider's plans is going to minimize adverse effects on human health due to the power generation and make progress toward an economy-wide elimination of greenhouse gas and emissions. And it updates the general mandate of the MPSC to require them to think about some other things than they have before. So the other thing it does is it increases funding for citizen groups to come before the MPSC and intervene in the cases. The MPSC, Michigan Public Service Commission cases are quasi-judicial. And so we worked really hard to find a way to increase public engagement. And so that is one of the ways that there's more money for citizen groups to come and intervene. And that has to be done in an equitable way. And then the other thing is that the MPSC is going to be meeting with citizens across the state to look at how the process could be better and more public facing and more responsive. So I think it's important to say that in what we call clean energy, maybe not everybody's going to agree that it is clean, but this was a package that addressed needs across the state and was built to ensure that we would have reliable and economic power generation. So it does include nuclear. It does include some biodigestion, which typically ends up being cow manure, but can also be landfill gases. And it does include burning some biomass, but did accept tires. So we're really excited about this. We have a lot of work left to do. And whether we can achieve that or not, I think does depend to a certain extent on your continued engagement, because it is an election year, and some people are worried about whether the people really want to go as far as we need to go to fight climate change. And by hearing from residents who are very committed and expect their leaders to lead in this area, it helps develop people's resolve and helps them understand the need for this work. So some of the things that we have on our agenda this year is a statewide septic code. That's not energy, but it is very important for our water quality and for our public health. We have a community solar bill. Jeff Irwin is sponsoring that. And so that is something that I think a lot of people would appreciate. It's community solar is when really a group or a neighborhood can have a solar panel array, and then they share in that energy production. Right now, that is not allowed. Another bill that we hope to pass is behind the meter storage and use. And this has an equitable provision so that people who have lower incomes would actually be compensated for the energy at a higher rate. And then another bill that I am involved, another bill package that I'm involved with is to keep microplastics out of our waterways. And I think probably most of you know that we all have microplastics in us. We don't exactly know what the health effects are, and it's something that we can't see or smell, but is damaging our environment and potentially damaging us. And then this will work to address one of the provisions that Charles talked about, land preservation. Natural approaches to climate change have a lot of co-benefits. So if we plant more trees, they shade our neighborhoods and keep people cooler, keep them healthier. If we preserve more wetlands, it helps prevent flooding, and that saves a lot of money. And then also in some places there are inadequate amounts of areas to recreate, and by preserving land in those areas, we can preserve carbon sinks and then also preserve a wonderful place for people to get together and relax. So I am working on what we call 30 by 30, or Michigan the Beautiful, or we were calling it Preserve My Special Places. So we're getting ready to introduce a bill, and I hope that we can get that passed and get that work done. The DNR has already begun that work. I think that we still have a ways to go to develop an approach that really works for all of Michigan, but I'm excited about it. There are other bills that are in play and that are coming up, but those are some of the biggest ones. And I think, we're always interested in hearing from you to understand exactly what it is that is important to you. Sometimes it's something we're already working on. I was delighted when I got to the legislature and found out that so many of my colleagues were already working on things that I had been working on at the county and had hoped would happen. Oh, and that reminds me, and so one other bill package that I don't want to miss out on is the polluter pay package that Jeff Irwin and Jason Morgan are sponsoring. That is really important. Their work on that has come out of the Gelman situation, which is an Ann Arbor pollution catastrophe that has been 40 years in the making. That's finally being addressed by EPA. But we have a long way to go before Michigan is really delivering on the promise of pure Michigan. And I'm going to keep working to help make it happen. So thank you for your engagement. I appreciate it. I think we can, okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Senator Shink. Alex says, want to go?
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. And I guess what I'll first say is, there are a lot of things that were on Senator Shink's list that, different folks at the Ecology Center are going to be working on. There's legislative work to always be done. Within the climate plan, these are sort of some of the key strategies. As you can sort of tell, we didn't get everything we wanted in this bill package, but we got a good amount of the way there. And we really need to thank Senator Shink because she was just a champion throughout. And even when it got really difficult, she pushed for the issues, especially around equity. Senate Bill 502, which granted the broader authority to the Public Service Commission to actually look at environmental justice and health and equity, is going to be really critical as we move forward and the utilities submit their integrated resource plans to set up how they're going to generate and distribute energy over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so while we still have a lot of work to do at the legislature, and we will be doing that in coalition, I want to talk a little bit about some of the other work that we're going to be doing, because this doesn't work unless it's implemented properly. And so, all of the fun and exciting stuff happens at the legislature. And, that's what people really pay attention to a lot of the time. And, that's the sexy part of this work, I guess. But an awful lot of work that we're going to be doing over the next several months and throughout the year is really going to be around implementation, which is all work really at the Michigan Public Service Commission. They are in charge of implementing a lot of this and creating the rules under which, the integrated resource plans will be filed, creating the rules around the public information sessions and gathering public input. And the way that gets set up, there's going to be a lot of work groups over the next year within the MPSC. The rules for the integrated resource plan, which we worked on the last time around, got to set those all up new, and we're waiting to hear when those work groups are going to start. Additionally, the public information sessions, we want to make sure that those are open, well advertised, that the timing of them allows for people, especially in those overburdened communities, to be able to participate. And we want to make sure that we have groups that are facing the highest energy burden that are joining, that are applying for the additional funding from the Utility Consumer Representation Fund, so that they can intervene in some of the cases. Ecology Center has been intervening in energy cases at the MPSC for several years now. I can't think of a time when we haven't been intervened in at least, two or three all at the same time, which requires, not just working with our attorneys, but working with experts, supplying testimony, reviewing documents. It's like I said, the sort of stuff behind the scenes that can seem a little boring. I think I want to go briefly to Senate Bill 273, which is now Public Act 229, which is the energy efficiency bill. This bill, I think, is the most important of the bills as far as equity outside of the integrated resource plan guidelines. We managed to do some stuff in this bill that we'd been working on for quite a while. I think when you were here with me last fall, I talked a little bit about the health and safety. I've been working on that for about 6 years and chair a health and safety subgroup of a low income energy waste reduction group at the MPSC. And we had started with pilot programs in utility energy efficiency plans to do some of the home repairs that are necessary before energy efficiency work can even be done, because what we were seeing were a huge number of deferrals. And for the last 4 years now, and going into the new plans, which one of the cases was just settled and one is close, the two largest utilities, we've had the health and safety work as a pilot program. Well, we knew it couldn't continue as a pilot in perpetuity, plus that limits the amount of money that can be put into those funds. And so within 273, we were actually able to get health and safety covered under the energy efficiency plans, or at least it can be part of it. We were also able to get a broader focus on building shell improvements, which, is the deeper energy retrofits and weatherization that needs to be done. And we also, for the first time, actually have achieved a low income carve out within what the utilities spend. So they have to spend 25% for low income and 30% in electricity and 35% for gas. Now that's a floor. It's certainly not a ceiling, and we'll continue to fight within the cases to expand that. We also got some money for workforce development, and that goes to sort of the Justice 40, where the workforce development money is supposed to go to the most highly energy burdened communities so that people can, be trained to do these energy retrofits and the health and safety work within their own communities. So it's sort of been exciting, but why I say, why this was all important and where our work has to go is one of the biggest pieces of this energy efficiency is the Michigan Energy Measures Database, the MEMD. And that's going to need to be rewritten to comply with this law. So we're going to be spending a lot of time looking at spreadsheets and really trying to figure out, how the utilities get credit for which measures they install, making sure that the deepest building shell measures get the most credit, making sure that the health and safety or deferral reduction repairs are all tied to specific energy efficiency measures, to really both, make people's homes safer, clean the air in the homes, eliminate toxins, and then reduce energy burden as well as emissions. So that's a lot of the work that we're going to be doing over the next year. Also, would be remiss if I didn't mention the siting bills. These were a big piece of the clean energy package. They sort of went through separately, started in the House. But what they did was, allowed the MPSC to have some say in implementing siting for large scale wind and solar. And this is necessary because in order for the utilities to be able to do this build out, we need places to put the wind and solar. And unfortunately, it's become a kind of a very partisan issue in some communities. And so what these bills do is they, encourage, provide some incentives for localities to come up with, really good zoning ordinances to deal with these issues. And provide timeframes for developers to work with the local units of government, but then also allow the MPSC to get involved when, it's necessary. And there is a movement out there to repeal those bills at this point. You'll probably see some people that are circulating petitions. They are trying to put it on the ballot. And so obviously, as that moves forward, we hope that it doesn't make it on the ballot. But, that piece of legislation was really critical to moving all of the Michigan climate work forward. And so, that is something we'll also be involved in. So what all that means, and I know I want to leave a little bit of time for questions as well. And we're a little delayed, sorry for technical issues. But there's going to be a lot of work that's ahead, and there are ways for you to get involved in all of this. Oh, I almost forgot. Budget. The MPSC, in order to do all of this work, needs funding. So we actually do have some work to be done on the state budget. That's already starting up. So you'll be getting some e-blasts from us about sort of budget actions you can take and talking to your legislators and about some of the other legislation. But there's also work groups that are part of the MPSC that you can get involved with. There's a low-income energy waste reduction work group. There's a low-income energy policy board that works, that meets, that takes public comment. There are going to be public meetings. The law required 4 a year. We need to fill those meetings and make our voices heard. Make it clear how we want the MPSC to address these issues. And so there are going to be lots of opportunities to engage, and we hope to have your support and have you working with us. So I guess I will turn it back to our moderator to take questions.
Yes, thank you, everyone, all the speakers. That was really amazing. Well, we have a few questions. I know Senator Shink, if you don't mind, I know there's a question that you answered, but maybe for everyone to hear the question and maybe the answer. One of the questions was for Senator Shink, you mentioned that $1 million of rebates will be available. What energy-related rebates are available as a result of state legislation?
Yeah. So I answered that the legislation creates certain conditions that will create sorry, that's sort of backwards. And I do want to say that the delay and the technical difficulties were mine. I had my computer froze for quite a while. And so it made it a bit of a challenge to start on time. And I appreciate everybody's patience with that. But so rebates developed by the federal government or developed by the utilities require certain conditions. The legislation helps create those conditions. So I don't have specifics now. My understanding is some of the programs may not even exist yet, but they will, and that they're coming down the pike, and we're going to be ready for them.
Yeah, I can also say that Eagle is working hard with the MPSC and working with the agencies and trying to develop some of the guidelines. A lot of the money is coming through the state, and so there will be RFPs and grants out there. There's actually a lot going on right now, and I don't think we're going to see all of the plans finalized until, for a couple of months yet, is what it was sounding like in my last conversation.
All right, thank you, Senator Shink and Alexis. Another question, how will you get DTE to move ahead with adopting solar and wind over fossil fuels? Who would like to answer this one. I know, Charles, you answered that question in the Q&A box. Do you want to go ahead and maybe somebody you can
give your answer and then I can add to it if you don't cover.
Yes. Everyone can chime in if they like. But yeah, I mean, this is, first of all, it's new. It's now state law. We've had, renewable energy standards before, and they were enforced basically by the Michigan Public Service Commission through various proceedings. They have to both do renewable energy plans that they're, held to meeting or significantly reprimanded by the commission. And also now through these integrated resource plans, which basically authorize any new, construction or any new projects to develop new energy generation in the state. And without the approvals, they will not get any money authorized to be spent from ratepayer funds. So there's significant, I think, enforcement capability here through the commission's regulatory process. But you want to add to that, Alexis, or Senator as well?
Well, I can add just from perspective from our work. For the first time ever, we are actually intervening now in a gas rate case, which we have not done before. We've done the integrated resource plans and all of the electric rate cases. Just so you also know, DTE is planning on filing another electric rate case on or about March 1st after just getting an increase. So we'll be intervened in that and arguing against, overburdening people with higher rates yet again. But the gas case is something new. And part of the reason, we want to get involved in the gas case now is in implementing, everything. We don't want to see DTE build out a whole huge amount of gas plants that then end up as stranded assets that we pay for. So part of the work is, also, making sure that their build outs are, the most is invested in energy efficiency, which gives more time for build out of, renewables and storage, and those technologies keep getting better, and, keeping them from investing in these big fossil fuel things that, they give up and then profit off of.
Thank you. Senator, would you like to add anything to this question?
I think those were good answers.
Yeah, thank you. One last question. This is about the implementation. So on Alex's point about the implementation, what will the legislator be doing to ensure that the MPSC implements the package properly?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. And one of the things that I've been trying to do as a legislator is find ways to work accountability into our bills, because it's the legislature's job to make laws, but we aren't the ones who implement them. And that's true whether it's a law about education or voting or clean energy. So I do believe that a couple things will come into play here around the implementation. One, the MPSC was engaged in developing these bills. They had a part in negotiating these bills. And so these bills are bills they can live with. And so I have faith that the MPSC will do its best to implement these bills in a constructive manner and an effective manner. And in fact, I would say that for the most part, we've seen an MPSC, a current MPSC, that is very willing to take an approach that is protective of people and the environment. So there's that. But then there's also the grassroots organizations or the nonprofits, the NGOs that can intervene and work to hold the MPSC accountable. I think if things got really bad, we can, the legislature can cut funding for the MPSC or do other things that are more extreme, but I don't really see that being something that we need to do. We could also pass other regulations, I don't really think that we're going to need to do that. I think that the MPSC is going to do its best to implement this, and they are separate from the legislature, so it's not like we can sit there and tell them what to do. We've done that. We've made the legislation, and now obviously we're going to watch it and see it, and we've made our preferences known, but I think it's up to the MPSC to do the right thing. And if they don't, we can call them out. The residents can call them out. But for the moment, I think I'm going to trust that they're going to do a good job, and also be grateful that organizations like the Ecology Center are staying engaged.
Thank you, Senator. Alexis, Charles, do you want to add anything on this question?
No, I think that was a good answer. I do see one other question coming in about how permanent is this energy bill?
Yeah. Yes.
So what I can say is nothing is ever permanent. A legislature can change it. Certainly a ballot initiative can repeal something the legislature does. None of that is easy. I mean, the larger energy packages are usually done every 5 or 6 years, sometimes longer. Um, Usually what we've seen is when the legislature takes on something this large in a package, there's not a big appetite to go back and make huge changes to it for a little while. Um, but things can always change, and certainly whoever controls the legislature, can make a big difference as to where the policies go. Um, but that's another reason why getting involved in some of the MPSC work is really critical. These plans that they submit and get approved, uh, you know, they build things from getting the plans approved. And, then they have them, and they're assets that need to be used, and, you know, they don't want to strand them immediately. So, the more you can lock in these integrated resource plans, in the energy waste reduction plans, the better we are. Um, Also worth just mentioning, with I guess one thing to add for the last question, is I think we have one of the most friendly public service commissions that we've ever had right now to these issues. And I think that they have wanted to, sort of work with us on some of the equity and justice issues for a long time, but hadn't had the authorization in the law, and now they do. And so I think we've been making the arguments and the cases, but now they have, something to actually stand on. So I think there's some really exciting work ahead.
I think I want to add that the MPSC, they want to hear what people think, right? So they're a quasi judicial body, but they're saying, yeah, we want to go out and hear what the people of Michigan think. And they have had some listening sessions, but we've added some in with this legislation. And then the other thing is working with Eagle Eagle is going to be developing reports about the integrated resource plans, and then MPSC isn't required to follow them, but they are required to read them and to understand them. And so I believe that we do have more guardrails than ever before in terms of the MPSC doing the right thing. But then also, when we're talking about how long does this legislation last, it could be indefinite, right? It could be for the rest of our lives. But even within that, there is some flexibility and room for improving the situation in Michigan because of the way we set it up, with analyses and information coming in and requirements on the utilities also to make those analyses. So I think it's a good package of bills that will last for a long time in terms of its usefulness.
And yeah, when I said they didn't want to take on like the whole big bill package again, that was not to suggest that there weren't tweaks and other pieces of legislation that, could be adopted along the way. And there's certainly other things we're going to be pushing for that we may not have gotten last time.
And there's a question about the line 5. This package in and of itself did not address line 5. So all the feel good fuzzy things I'm saying about this, I'm not saying about line 5.
Can I add one more point? I know we're at probably at time, but you know, I think it's important to mention that this last question. It brings up the subject that elections matter, and we wouldn't have had any of this had we not elected new members to the legislature who finally were interested in taking up a package like this. Before that happened, the governor's climate plan was basically sitting in a legislature that was unwilling to take it up. And so, thankfully, Senator Shink is not up for election this year, but many of our members in the House are. And, we don't take positions here as a 501c3 organization, but I certainly urge everybody to get out and support candidates that are supporting these kinds of policies. This is really important work, and it starts with getting people in office that share your values.
Thank you, Charles.
And thank you, Senator Shink.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And Senator Shink, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We're very grateful and absolutely appreciate all the work that you do and what you help make possible. Charles and Alex says, I work with them all the time, and I'm always impressed by the work that you do and how much effort you put into your work and also to help make a difference. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone who was with us today at the event. We appreciate all of you. Our work is not also possible without all the support that we get from our supporters and community. So thank you so much. And if you feel inspired by this event and the work that we do at the Ecology Center, you can make a donation to support our work. Or you can even make a monthly donation of a $10 or $20 a month, and that will make a huge difference. So we're gonna have, my colleague is gonna have the link. I think it's already there in the chat if you would like to make a donation. So yeah, thank you so much. And we hope we see you again in our next event. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Senator.
You too. Bye-bye.